You ready, Bill?
Okay.
Okay, go.
Okay. We will call to order the meeting of Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners special meeting, first round interviews for Thursday, May 17th. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie, roll call, please.
Lathrop?
I'm here.
Mayor?
Here.
Gorfulet? Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Crawford?
Here. Now is our chance for first public comment.
Do you want me to read the rules?
Sure. Never know.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Do we have anyone for public comment this time? No? All good? Okay, thank you. So we're going to continue with our first round interviews for the position of Grand Traverse County Administrator. So, we all set?
Yes, we are
Okay.
set. Technology is ready. We've tested it. I believe Mr. Todd is waiting, so we
We
can
have-
he's muted currently, so he
Okay.
can't hear us. But
We
if
have
you can
Greg Todd.
unmute
He's there
him.
on our screens. Hopefully at home you can see him too when this shows up.
All right. Greg, can you hear us?
Yep, I got you.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, we can hear you and see you.
Excellent.
Am I the only one you can see, or does the camera move?
I can see from room to room. I got everybody.
Okay, good. We'll start by introducing ourselves to you. Okay, so Sunny?
I'm Sonny Wheelock. I've been a Grand Traverse County Commissioner for 18 years. I've been in this community, my family's been here for 175 years. I've been around a while.
Nice to meet you.
Bob Johnson. I've been a county commissioner for over 3.5 years now, and I am not running again. So.
And what do you do, Bob?
I've worked for Consumers Energy and retired from the Coast Guard. So.
Hi, Greg. My name is Cheryl Follett. I've been a commissioner for 1.5 years. I'm a practicing attorney and a longtime resident.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Carol Crawford. We met the other day.
Good.
I am, this is my 4th year as a county commissioner, my 2nd year as the chair, and I'm a full-time mom and a part-time accountant.
Good.
Hello, Greg. I'm Ron Klaus, lifelong resident, Grand Traverse County. Been a commissioner for, this is my 4th year, and I'm a general contractor for 40 years.
Nice to meet you, Ron.
Hi, Greg. I'm Dan Lathrop. I've lived here since 1975. I've been a commissioner for 6 years, and I'm a practicing physician and surgeon.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, my name is Tom Mayer. I've lived here since '87, along with my wife. We live right in town, and just like Cheryl, we were elected in '16, so we're about 1.5 years into our terms.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, we're going to get started. My questions back up here. So we'll just start with sort of background question. We have all your background materials in front of us, but if you could begin by briefly reviewing your professional career path and your career goals. And if you could
Sure.
let us know, in your opinion, how do you fit with the county and how does this county fit with you?
Well, I've been in county government since 2000. Before that, I used to build golf courses. In Michigan, actually. Was there for a number of years off and on. And the position I'm in now, or the county I'm in now, I've been with them for 17 years. I've been county administrator for 7.5. When I first took over the position, we had a lot of issues. There was a lot of projects that we were working on. And we've worked through all those pretty successfully, and I've kind of gotten to a point to where it's time for a new challenge. And looking around, we've got, my wife and I own a place in Michigan, lower Michigan, southwestern part of the state. So we've always wanted to get to Michigan eventually. We've got two daughters, one that's in college and one that's a sophomore in high school. So we wanted to start looking now and see what was out there. And I had met James on another job interview I had, and when this one came back up, he reached out to me and said, hey, I think Grand Traverse would be a good fit. So put an application in, and looking forward to working with you guys and seeing where we can go. And I think county-wise, we're a little smaller out here than you are population-wise, but when you look at our budgets, comparable budgets, and kind of the breadth of management, they're very similar. And I think it would be a good challenge.
Okay. I assume that you've researched us a little bit.
Yes, I have.
Researched you. Describe the process that you would follow or that you've already followed to evaluate current operations of this county, and do you have any improvement suggestions? What would you do when you get here?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is, just kind of looking at your history over the last few years with your administration. First thing I would do is reach out to all the department heads and my direct reports and try to build a good rapport and let them understand that, if I come to the county, I'm there for the duration. It's really tough when that top management position fluctuates a lot for whatever reason, and I think it leaves staff vulnerable and hurts morale. And to me, the most important thing is my staff. So I would want to make sure that they understand where I'm coming from. They understand, what we want to build there, and they understand that, I would be coming there to add some stability to the situation. So that would be goal number one: meeting everyone and understanding, what they need and what they expect from me.
Okay. Thank you. So, we've already had experience with that. Let's see. What do you see as the county administrator's role in communicating with the media and the public and the employees? How do you plan to be successful in your communication efforts?
Yeah, you know what? It's all open. I've got a really good relationship with our local media here, with our paper. We do not hide or even unintentionally hide anything. We're very open. Anything that's coming up, if it's an issue, we try to get out in front of it quickly. We learned a few years ago by not doing that on a project that ended up burning us pretty good and not being completed, that we really need to get out ahead of it. We, for a number of years, we didn't have much of a social media network, and we were behind the times on Facebook and Twitter and everything that people use to communicate now. So we've really built up our social media communication network well here, and it's very effective. And as soon as we have any issue that's coming up, we put a press release together right away. We send it to the paper. If we get it out in front of people as quickly as we can, and I think that's the most important thing. It's especially in this day and age, transparency is everything, and it's not just cliche. It's true. You need to make sure that your citizens know exactly what you're doing and exactly what your plans and your goals are. And even if a mistake comes along, you've got to be able to address it, own it, and move on to build their trust.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So in that regard, have there been any hot button issues or dicey issues or issues where there's been heightened press interest in what's going on at your county government level?
Oh, we've had many, many, many of those. So
a couple of examples. Because we've had a few too.
I'll give you an example of the one that I kind of touched on earlier. We had a homeless shelter that we were building, or that was proposed to be built. And we had gotten CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funds to build it. And this was, I want to say 2009, 8 or 9 when we purchased the property. And, you know, if you're familiar with the CDBG program, there's public hearings you need to go through and you need to advertise and do everything. And we did all of those as we worked through the process. But the construction of the project lagged behind the public outreach. So by the time we were ready to build and ready to get moving, it had been a few years since we had actually had any public hearings. And we just moved forward. And there was a resident in the neighborhood that got involved in a negative way against the project and really made our lives miserable. I mean, he was, in fact, I want to hire the guy. He was so good.
I don't have any of those.
Getting out in front of us, and you know, and it was as the tough thing is as government, you know, not only were we behind on social media, but we had to be as open and transparent and honest as we could be, and we couldn't use the techniques and tactics that, you know, the other side uses on social media. So, you know, it went from a very good project to one that we ended up, the commissioner ended up scrapping because there was just so much negative publicity with it. And, you know, we've got, you know, our homeless in Queen Anne's County, we're talking about, you know, a dozen people, maybe, you know, and it was the existing homeless shelter was a cold weather shelter only, so it was only open during the winter, and this was going to be full time. And we, the county that had worked with them, knew that they weren't a threat, but we didn't express that well. So the community just saw, oh no, homeless shelter, oh no, there's going to be, you know, transient people from Baltimore. No, not Baltimore, you know, coming into our neighborhood. And, you know, it was next to a school and they're going to abduct our kids. And I mean, you know how it is. It just piles on. And we just weren't in a position to address that in the right way. And we let it get away from us. We did the minimum stuff required of us, the minimum hearings, but we didn't go out and really go after the community to let them know what we're doing. And I think that's the biggest lesson we learned on that, is that you can't, as government, you can't assume that everyone knows what you do, and you can't assume that they're going to think it's a great idea because we think it's a great idea. So you really need to be able to sell what you're selling, and we didn't in that situation. So it was a tough lesson for us, but it was a lesson well learned. And we've had growth issues over the years, so we've had a lot of growth fights, you know, no growth. So we've had, it might sound kind of silly, but that's one of the reasons I'm looking for another project, another place to go to, is because we don't have those issues anymore, you know? The fun stuff's gone. We
got fun stuff.
Oh, we could have fun.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, you know, I was looking in your highlights where it says you reorganized county government, reduced the workforce by 25% while still maintaining levels of service. How did that go? How did you go about doing that? And did you have to change your plans several times?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, just kind of an overview. Government to me is a living creature. It's an organ. It's a being, and it's always changing. You know, we're always looking at how to reorganize here or there. But what happened was, when I first became county administrator, before that I was county COO, and the outgoing commissioners at the time, none of them were running for re-election. And this was 2010. You know, our market had crashed. You know, we're 65-70% funded through property tax, and our property taxes were, you know, in the gutter. Everything looked terrible. And on the way out the door, they took our fund balance, they took our rainy day fund, and they used it for operating. So we knew we were in trouble. This new set of commissioners coming in, and we had 5 brand new commissioners come in, all Republican, all conservative Republicans that said, we're facing a $21 million deficit. How are we going to fix it? So what we did is we put together a task force made up of local business owners, business people. And we said, okay, listen, we've got $21 million deficit. We need you to show us how to get there with no revenue increase. What does it look like for the county to cut $21 million out? We've got a $130 million budget, but $60 million of it's Board of Ed. So out of a $60 million budget, basically, what is that going to look like? So they did that exercise, and we broke them up into groups. There was education, there was public safety, there was roads and transportation, and then just general government. And they all looked at the cuts that were necessary and went back to commissioners and said, we can get there, but it's ugly, and your government's not going to function right. So then we looked at, what revenue increases? What do we have to do to make this as less painful as possible? So at the end of the day, we came up with about I think they settled on an 8 cents property tax increase and about $12 million in cuts. And we held a big public hearing, and I actually ran the hearing. It was a 5-hour public hearing with a high school auditorium full of people, and we let them all speak. And they all had a chance to get up and state their concerns and what their thoughts were. But at the end of the day, that provided the commissioners, 5 brand new conservative Republican commissioners, the political cover, if you will, to say, hey, listen, we can't do this through cuts alone. We've got to increase taxes a little bit. And that's what they did. And there was no fallout from that. They, by explaining that ahead of time, they got it done. Now, we did cut our workforce from 500 to 400. So, we cut 20% of the workforce out. We did it through an early retirement incentive was the first thing we did. We said, okay, we've got some folks that probably need to go. Let's incentivize to get them out the door. Then we went through and eliminated empty positions or unfunded but not filled positions. Then, quite frankly, I got in the car with my HR director and we drove around to each department and terminated about 25 folks. So it was tough. But I think what it did is it really kind of right-sized us. We, there for a while, our property tax revenues were just rolling in, and anytime a department needed something, they'd hire new folks, and it was land of milk and honey, and we got too fat. And so we cut it back as far as we could, actually further than we should have. And right now, I think we're at about 460. So over the last, 6 or 7 years, we've built our employee base back up to where it's needs to be. But that was, it was kind of a long answer for it. But that's really what we did. We had to look at it holistically. And when I look at your, when I look at your pension deficit, that's what comes to me. That's kind of where you need to go, because you're not going to do it all on cuts, and you're not going to do it all on revenue. So there's got to be, you got to figure out a combination of how to get there to make it work, and you have to explain it well to your taxpayers and your citizens so that they understand it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep rolling with that. You mentioned the pension issue. Based on your research and what you know about our county, what are some of the other opportunities and challenges that you see right now? You said you're looking for a challenge. What are they here?
I think I'm going to go back to, just looking at some of the fluctuations with your department heads, some coming in and going out, and kind of just the turnover you've had there. I think that's really probably the most important thing to address, and to kind of look at your departments holistically and say, okay, what do we need to do? What doesn't work? I think just looking at your operations, it seems like, all things considered, given the void of leadership at the top, and I don't say this to be critical of the commissioners, but there has been a void there based on your administrators. It's actually surprising that the county's running so well, So I think you've got some very capable, talented people there that want to be able to rally around a new leader and be successful.
Okay. Yes, Dan, and then Tom.
I'd like to go back to our pension deficit. Did you have a chance to look at how we have handled it?
I've looked a little bit at it, yeah. Haven't spent a whole lot of time on it, so I just know that it's substantial, and I think there was a proposal to, correct me if I'm wrong, but the employees do not contribute right now to their pension. Is that correct?
Some
Well,
do, some don't.
Some do, some don't. But what we did is we renegotiated with MERS and came up with an extended payment plan. And we are paying about $6 million a year on that debt. And that should, in about what, 16 years?
This is the first of 16 years,
Yeah,
yes.
should pay us off. When you said speak to the public, and are you considering borrowing the money to pay off our pension?
Oh, no, not at all. So I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you should borrow money to pay a pension off. I was looking at it more as, you've got this huge liability floating out there. If you're contemplating addressing it through a tax increase, then that's when you would need to go to the public to talk to them about that. I mean, if it's a revenue expense issue, that's where that would come in. So,
Okay, I think we already have it managed, as long as we pay the payments we're supposed to make, and put some money in an irrevocable trust. I'd be disappointed if we're going to raise taxes on our citizens.
okay, it was.
Is there a question?
Well, I just want to know if you want to raise taxes or not.
Okay.
No, I apologize for that, Commissioner, if you misunderstood that. I was not implying that. I was looking at the deficit and trying to, it's money in, money out. You either increase your revenue or you decrease your expenses to address those deficits. So, but if you have a payment plan set up, follow that.
Okay. Tom?
When you made your cuts, you ended up with you went from about what number of employees we have currently to, about 20% less. But in our case, this board hires the administrator, and then the administrator hires the rest of the people who work for the county, directly or indirectly. And I'm concerned about whether jobs are always posted publicly, and whether you're interested in having a deputy administrator. But just one more question before you can answer. In our HR department, we've been running with 3 employees, like a HR specialist type staff. We just added another, so I think we're at 4. But because the last HR director left, we haven't replaced the HR director because we would leave that up to the administrator. What does your HR department look like, and how do you feel about the posting of jobs, and also whether you would prefer or not prefer to have a deputy administrator?
Our HR department, we've got our director and then four employees underneath the director. We're very thorough about the post of jobs. To me, the HR department's critical, especially if you've got issues with any personnel issues that come up, but especially in a situation where there's a little bit of a leadership lack at the top, that HR department's really got to make sure that they're focused on what they're doing. Has there been an issue with posting jobs? I'm sorry, I'm not clear.
Well, we had a county administrator who hired the deputy without posting the job.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I've never had a deputy. I don't even have, quite frankly, I don't really use administrative staff much. I write all my own letters. I do all my own emails. So to me, a deputy, I would naturally have to take a look at the responsibilities, but it just doesn't seem like there's that width of responsibility that would require a deputy, quite frankly. So I think I would look at, if you've got a funded position there, any funded positions there, I mean, that's one of the first things I'm going to look at. What could we do better with that money? Is there a need someplace else? Do you need to beef up your HR staff or someone else, instead of having a deputy county administrator?
So you would have a director of HR then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What, oh, Sunny, go ahead.
Well, as long as we're talking about staffing and HR, human resources type management, we have a situation here where we have basically 30 departments. We have 13 separate bargaining units plus 2 employees associations. You know, the negotiations of contracts take somebody almost a full year to get through the year to have another contract for next year. You know, we talked a little bit, or we've been talking here over the last couple of minutes about the unfunded pension liability. Grand Traverse County closed basically all the defined benefit programs with the exception of the circuit court in 2001. But because of MERS and amortization schedules and stuff, and at least in my opinion, their investment policies, much of the money that we had or we've, should have had is not there and available. So that's where a big piece of the shortfall comes. We will see, I expect to see in the actuarial that will come out within the next month or so, that we're 60% funded in our unfunded pension liability. 60%, in my mind, is not an unreasonable amount to be funded. I might want it to be a little bit higher, but we certainly don't need to be 100% funded. Have you had experience with whether or not negotiating contracts with large bargaining units, or where are you at with that?
No, I have not. We do not have unions in Queen Anne's County and have dealt with any of that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go back to recruiting employees. What would you do to fill some of these positions? As you said, we've had some flux in our department heads, have trouble finding and keeping talented employees. How would you tackle that?
Well, I would hit up, the Michigan Association of Counties first, and get some advertisements out through them, through Michigan Municipal League. Just try to use all the resources in the state that are available, and go out of state if you need to. I would assume that there's, like you said, there's plenty of talent around. It's just finding them and getting them to come to Grand Traverse and building that stability that makes folks want to stay.
How would you do that? How would you make Grand Traverse County a great place to work?
Well, it starts at the top. It's, they've got to have confidence in their administrator that, if they come to Grand Traverse, they're going to have a good work experience. They're going to have someone that's got their back. One of the things that I always try to do, it's not always easy, but I always try to do is, give my staff and my elected officials, give them all the credit and take all the blame, because they need to know that you've got their back. So, and I think that's one thing, if you ask the directors that work for me and the elected officials that I work for, that they will probably all tell you. I always make sure that, if there's an issue, the buck does stop with me, and I'll make sure that, that my elected officials are protected as much as they are, as well as my staff.
Okay. Yes, Cheryl.
How many direct reports do you have in your current job?
Right now, I'm up to 13. I had a director retire last year, and instead of refilling that position, I absorbed some of the positions under her. And I had economic development director. We've struggled finding an economic development director that fits in with our county. And so we've been through 3 in the last 5 years. And after the last one left, the commissioner said, you know what, do we need a director, or do we just need a manager, folks under her? So I've inherited them as well. So.
And what's your opinion now of whether you need one or not?
I don't, hold on, let me think. I don't think Queen Anne's County does for an economic development director. We're a small county. We have a limited amount of growth area. So getting big new businesses in, we're restricted by that. We're right across the bay from the Washington area. So a lot of our folks do go across, we call it going across the bridge, go to the Western Shore to work. But they're going to work for $120,000 to $200,000 salaries, and that can't be matched in Queen Anne's County. So what we try to do is focus on, just focus on our existing businesses and provide the incentives that we can to make them successful. And one of the things we've really worked hard on is speeding up our planning and zoning process. The permitting process can be onerous, and especially in Maryland. I mean, we've got so many restrictions on us handed down from the state. So that's really, we actually have a economic development liaison that is in the planning office that will walk the business owners through the process to kind of streamline it and make it more effective. So now I don't think we actually need a director. I think we're operating what we are right now.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, go ahead.
In the Economic Development Department, what do you have in Brownfield Redevelopment Authority? Is there a person doing that? How do you handle that?
No, we actually don't have any brownfield here, so not in Queen Anne's County.
Okay. Dan, do you have a question?
Yeah. If you had a commissioner or a couple of commissioners that wanted to direct you on their own, as opposed to the whole board directing you, how would you manage that?
That never happens, does it?
Nope.
That's part and parcel of this job. And one of the things I always try to do is make it their idea to go back to the board and discuss it with them. I don't, if a commissioner tells me something in confidence and asks a favor in confidence, I'll hold it in confidence. I won't necessarily do it. I'll try to get them to go back and get buy-in from at least the majority of the board. We've historically been split here 3-2, whether it's 3-2, growth or no growth. So I've had a lot of experience dealing with that. I think any county administrator has. There's always every commissioner has something they want to get done specific. They've got their own projects, and even if it's not, that they're trying to go around others, they just want to get something done. So a lot of times they'll just come and say, hey, we really need to get this completed. And that's when you say, well, you know what, I think, I think Commissioner Crawford would be a good asset for you. Go back and talk to her, and let's build a coalition and try to get this done. So it happens all the time.
So you're against someone trying to go around you. You want people to come directly to you.
Oh, absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Let's go with this fun question. If we were to Google you, what would we find? Anything interesting, odd?
I doubt it.
Fun?
James and I actually had this conversation earlier, and he's like, I can't find anything on you. I said, what? You want me to go create something? Even though I push social media at the county level, I stay off of it. I am not a Facebook user. I don't get my news from that. I don't set my policies or my thoughts towards that. So I'm pretty unconnected to the social media world personally. So I don't know what you'd find, quite frankly.
Okay, Bob?
Can I follow up on that? What do you think, given now social media, is out there to stay one way or the other, what do you think should be the role of that in county government?
I think it plays a huge role on a county level, on an organizational level. I think, using your Facebook feed and Twitter to get the message out, send your message out on what you want is vital. We do that a lot. We push that hard. Any event, regardless of what it is, we've got a TV station that has a YouTube station. So we roll out short videos all the time, informational, what's happening, what's going on, get that out. So you can't survive without using social media at the organizational level. I just stay off it on the personal level.
We don't do it at all, just so you know.
Our 911 department does it, and they do a great job. They do it with humor when the things are right. But we don't have a social media presence. That's kind of why I asked, because we don't, as he was talking about it. So
all you need is a 25-year-old with a phone, and you got
Okay, probably.
Good to know.
Yes. Do you see any obstacles in taking this position? If we offered you the position, first of all, how long do we wait for you? How long would it take for you to wrap up what you're doing there and come here? And do you see any obstacles?
Sure. I'm on contract. I've got, a 60-day notice if I were to get out of the contract. We're finishing up our budget right now. So the commissioners, our fiscal year starts July 1. So they vote on it next week. And that's really kind of the last big task coming up. So I would say if I went to them and said, hey, listen, I've got an opportunity. I'd like to go before 60 days. I would think they would probably allow that. The obstacles, quite frankly, going to be, is Traverse City a good fit for my family? I've still got a sophomore in high school. So it's just, is that move going to be good for my family? And that's the question for me. So.
We do have some awesome schools here. So.
Yes, we do. My son is a sophomore as well, so yes, there are awesome schools here.
I noticed some pretty good high schools.
Yes. I open up, Sunny.
Longevity question.
Longevity, you have some standard questions.
Standard longevity question. I've sat in this chair long enough that I'm now conducting interviews for the 6th county administrator since I've sat here. That's a lot.
Yes, it is.
In order to get stability for the future of this community, I'm looking for a administrator that's going to be here 10 years. Are you that guy?
Yeah, the next move I make, I've been with Queen Anne's County almost 18. I've never looked at county government as a gun for hire position. I'm not one of those guys. To me, the reason I'm in government is because I do care about the citizens that I work for, and you can't build a relationship and you can't build the trust of a community if you're only there for a couple of years and gone. So I spent 10 years building golf courses. I've been with Queen Anne's County for 17. I figure I've got 10 or 15 years left in my career, and I want to do it in one spot. I'm not looking to bounce around.
Thank you.
I hate moving.
Well, you'll love to move here. It's an absolutely gorgeous community, and, I don't think there's anyone in this room that won't verify that, and, say that if you get an opportunity to visit, it'll be very exciting for you, I think.
It's too bad you couldn't be here today. It's an absolutely beautiful day today.
It's raining and 50 outside right now.
Sorry.
Poor guy, yeah.
Does any of the commissioners have any more questions for Greg? Are we good? Greg, do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I really want to thank you for taking the opportunity to do this, by a video chat. I apologize for not being able to get out there. I'm actually sitting in a little closet at John.
Looks like a closet.
Surgery, so she should be done about the time I'm done. So.
That's okay, we understand. Tom, did you have something?
Well, since you don't have union employees, that's important. Many of our union employees work for the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department makes up about 1/3 of our budget. So if we ask you back for a second interview, maybe we could ask you a question again about collective bargaining and union employees, because we're going to continue to have them here. They're not
Sure.
going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And we'd like to know how you would work with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I'll try to unionize between now and then.
I don't recommend it.
You got a couple weeks to get some really good experience, possibly.
Go team. Great. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for
Thank you,
taking
Greg.
time with us today.
Appreciate it.
All right, we got some time to kill.
I know that Dennis is here, but we do have time.
Oh, I can at least get a cup of coffee.
All right, we'll take a break.
Feels better.
Dennis isn't really
It was getting
I was starting to feel like I was
warm.
last night all of a sudden.
Oh, it was super warm. They had to turn it off because
So
of
we can
the...
hear. Yeah, so it wouldn't interfere. So
Yeah.
yeah, pull it down.
Much
Here,
better.
please turn the lights on. Yeah, some lights too. Really good.
It's a tough decision.
I don't care.
But he's coming from
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I take a minute to let you guys know what we're gonna do once we're done with the interviews?
As long as we're not square dancing or singing.
We're not.
Okay.
Senior karaoke.
I know, it's not pretty.
Yep.
But
We met already.
Yep.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan. Dennis.
Dennis, nice to meet you.
Orlando, Florida, I wonder why.
Michigan State University.
Shake your hand.
I'm standing up already, so I'm not gonna sit down first.
Hi,
Oh, yeah.
I'm Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Nice to meet you.
Like 500 would be a class?
He's already been sweet talking me.
Well, there you go.
He said
They
it's
all
been
do,
30
don't they?
It's been 30 years, and I said, yeah, I said, so we're, 50, and he said, well, I'm 50, how come you're 20?
He doesn't have a go green shirt on.
It was pretty smooth.
The DO's
He
ad.
doesn't have what?
I said you don't have a go green shirt on.
It's supposed to
He
be a
could, though.
philosophical difference, but there really isn't anymore.
We're kind of in the shadows right now. We're still doing it.
Yeah, good idea.
They need a little more money, it sounds like.
That's pretty easy, isn't it?
It's a school.
For them, it actually is. I think for them, it
It
is.
used to be, that school used to be in Pontiac.
Parking behind, right?
Yeah.
And nickel and dime you for everything.
I think it's successful and it
I
might
don't
even be
know.
growing.
I don't think anything is worse than when
Are we
my
ready,
daughter
Bonnie?
was in
Yes.
Arizona.
Are you sure?
They charge
Absolutely.
$25 a year.
I don't think
Everybody ready?
Yeah,
Conversation's out?
got it.
I don't have a gavel. Recycling thing.
It's the University of Arizona.
Okay.
She managed their research facility.
All right, we're gonna start a little early on this one. We have Dennis Durham. Welcome.
Thank you.
I will disclose in advance, the commissioners know this, but the public might not, that I actually know you. We graduated high school together, so
You helped me with my advanced chemistry.
possibly, it's possible.
That's totally inappropriate.
Bob doesn't believe you either.
You need to recluse yourself.
Recluse myself.
There you go.
Recuse myself?
No, recluse.
I'll go hide in a hole. Let's get the microphone set. Aha, there we go. The people at home like to hear. It's not live, but it'll be on tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, we will start with, we have all of your background
Are
stuff
you
here
going to
in
have us
front of us.
introduce
I
ourselves?
missed that part, didn't I?
Yes.
Well,
Go,
we kind
Sonny.
of did. We kind of did the thing.
Well, we said hi.
Hi, go anyway.
I'm Sonny Wheelock. My family's lived in this community 175 years. I own a welding fabricating company, and I've been a county commissioner 18 years.
Okay.
I thought you were
our
gonna say for the whole
historian.
time of that, 175 years.
Not quite.
I'm Bob Johnson,
I only
I've
feel
been
that
here
way
3.5 years, retired from the Coast Guard and work for Consumers Energy.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Follett. I've been on this board for a year and a half. I'm an attorney, and I'm a fourth-generation native.
I have been here in Traverse City for 15 years. This is my 4th year as a commissioner, my 2nd year as the chair, and I'm a full-time mom and a part-time accountant.
I'm Ron Klaus. Been here my whole life in Grand Traverse County and been on the Commissioners Board for 4 years. And I'm a 40-year contractor, general contractor. So
I'm Dan Lathrop. I've been here since 1975. I've been a commissioner for 6 years, and I make my living as a physician and surgeon.
My name is Tom Mayer. I'm also the more recent commissioner. As Cheryl, both of us were elected in 69, not in 69, in 16. And so we're about a year and a half into our terms. I've lived here since '87 along with my wife, and I have a business and arts background. And a new piece of trivia for everyone. I've been co-presenting a poetry night once a month for close to 3 years.
No
Really?
kidding.
See that?
Wow.
You should tell us where so we could, no. Okay, we will get started. So we have, once again, we have your background, your resume and things in front of us. Describe your professional career path and your career goals, and also how you think you would fit with the county and how the county would fit with you.
Okay, we don't have time limits or anything, do we?
You have an hour.
Okay, so if I take an hour on this question, then we're, because I could.
Cheryl will
But-
stop you long before that.
I started in local government at the city of Littleton, Colorado, and then I started working in city manager's office there, doing constituent relations, all other communications, event planning, kind of the stuff the new person on the block in the manager's office gets to do. And I enjoyed it so much and was pretty good at it. The city manager there, his name was Andy McMenemy, he saw that I had kind of a passion for this kind of a career and the service, so he took me under his wing and gave me direction on what to do. And so then I started in the master's program at the University of Colorado, the MBA program there. And not long after that, I was recruited to come back to my home state and work in the manager's office in the city of Portage, which is right there with Kalamazoo. Portage is a very high growth community of 44,000, 45,000. It's the 5th largest retail corridor in the state of Michigan. So we didn't have budget problems there. We had money problems in terms of we couldn't spend it quick enough. We had so many developers waiting in line to do this project or that project that we really had to keep up and be a very customer service focused organization. And I learned a lot there in 7.5 years working for the manager there. And shortly after that, I was recruited to the city of Kalamazoo, which was the polar opposite of the city of Portage at the time. They had a little over 81,000 citizens, including Western Michigan University. Every year was a budget deficit that had to be resolved. Downtown development was non-existent. Vacant buildings were prevalent throughout the downtown area, and taxes were an issue because every year the threat was we have to raise taxes so we can just continue to provide basic services. So when I went to the city of Kalamazoo, it was with the idea that I would take over daily operations and the city manager could focus more on strategic planning and things of that nature. And for 3 years, I worked as a change agent in that organization to flip the switch on how we address budgets, how we organize what we do on a daily basis, and how we would look for new revenue streams for supporting those basic services. When I left the city of Kalamazoo and went to the city of Parchment, that was specifically for my experience in economic development, because Parchment was a paper town, and when the paper industry took a dive, they closed their doors and laid off 2,500 people overnight, and they lost half the tax base in the city of Parchment. So somebody had to figure out, A, how to continue to provide basic services, which I had had many years of experience doing with the city of Kalamazoo and also organizational planning with Portage, but somebody that really had economic development experience and somebody that could grab a hold of and redevelop 80-some acres of vacant paper mill. So I was lucky in that I secured $2 million in brownfield loans from the state to help with that. $2 million, a little over $2 million in federal highway funds to help build new infrastructure in that 80 acres. And at the time that I left the city of Parchment, there was about $8 million in investment already in new businesses in that area of the paper mill. When I left the city of Parchment, it was a difficult leave in that after 10 years, the city commission there had changed in the previous November election, and it seemed like everything that I was doing was questioned or under more intense scrutiny than before. And so every couple weeks when we had a public meeting, there was one more thing that had to be asked and answered in that city commission meeting. And eventually, I decided I wasn't going to participate in that anymore. And my wife and I are to the point now where our kids are last year of high school. We're going to be empty nesters, and we were looking for a place that we really wanted to spend the rest of our years and into retirement relocating, like our last relocation. So I left the city of I notified the city of Parchment that I was going to be leaving at the end of my contract, and that would give them about 6 to 8 months to locate a new person. I thought I was doing a good thing, and evidently threw gasoline on the fire, and shortly after that, it just got unbearable, and I left the city of Parchment. I'm doing odd consulting jobs, but those don't pay for college, either at Michigan State or Western Michigan University. So I'm looking to just find a place where I can land, my family can relocate to, my wife and I, and we can just be happy living in a beautiful place. And so this is it.
Okay.
See, I told you I could keep going, but
No, we're good. That's a good amount of time. So I assume that you have researched us. Based on your research and understanding of Grand Traverse County, what do you think our opportunities and our challenges are here?
Well, I've been on a couple interviews, and there's similar questions, and there's also questions that are a little bit more specific, like, okay, when you're the city manager or you're the county administrator, what are you going to do? And I always like to answer that I'm not going to sell you my secret ideas for free, but, and also any person that comes in and tells you that they know what you're dealing with and what is going to resolve your issues or how to operate without even being in the community and in the position is really not being honest with you. So first and foremost, I don't know what I would do as county administrator right off the bat here. I do know from reading on the internet, and I know from my colleagues in the business about the reputation here, it seems like financially the county has been struggling in past years, but that has been turned around. The pension issue is looming, and Grand Traverse County is like the lowest rated in terms of pension debt. Your post-employment benefits also need to be addressed. So while your financial issues look good today and your fund balance is healthy today, I think there still is a lot of work that has to be done in the financial system here to ensure sustainability going forward. Not just next year or the year after that, but we're talking 10 years from now. So I would strongly encourage anybody that takes this position, or hopefully when I'm hired to do it, the first and foremost thing would be to address those two retirement issues. Secondly, any new person, I think, has to start with developing relationships, not just with you as the bosses and the policymakers here in the county, but all local government leaders that serve in the county. And I think that's one of those things that kind of makes me unique in terms of being a candidate for this position, because I come from that background, and I understand very well what small communities, townships, and cities struggle with and what they need and what they're looking towards the county as kind of a helping hand, what they would partner up with, and really what would benefit them. So I think that is also those first two things that I would really undertake as the county administrator.
Okay.
I don't want to,
Bump up this one.
being that this is a job interview, I don't want to make it dark and negative, but I understand the struggles that the county has had over the last number of years and the struggles in finding a new leader to continue on. And I think that you're kind of in a point now, if you make a mistake here or you get somebody that leaves in the next couple of years, you're really going to be behind the eight ball. And so I think it's very important, not only in this search, but hiring a new deputy, and also in addressing the employees going forward, that the goal has to be sustainability and longevity going forward.
Okay.
Carol, please.
Let's go, Sonny.
I guess the one thing that I'd like to point out is the fact that we have addressed the pension situation. We've come to negotiations with MERS. We have set up a 16-year amortization program with a fixed fee. The actuarial that should come out within the next month or so should show us at about 60% funded. The projected $7.8 million OPEB liability, according to the most recent figures, is about 2.4. So we have made significant changes toward that, and I think a lot of the, I've said for a long time, a lot of the numbers were false numbers to start with. So the bottom line is we have made significant improvements in our situation with MERS. We finally got MERS to come to the table and admit that they had something to do with the way it is. Every year MERS did an actuarial. They told Grand Traverse County, your premium for this year is X number of dollars. We never one time failed to make that payment. They failed to meet their obligations and their promises of how they were going to return on our money.
I certainly understand that. I've worked with MERS for a number of years. I know how they operate. And the only reason I say that the county has to keep its eye on the ball on this And it's not just this county, it's every, what's the figure, like 600 municipalities in the state of Michigan are dealing with similar issues. That whenever you're dealing with unions and you're dealing with employees, actual people that are part of your workforce, you're always going to have a very expensive service delivery. And it's not like you can just buy a couple of computers and that's taken care of. So if you have a vacancy in your system where an employee leaves, instead of just filling that vacancy because you always have or because it's bargained, that it's important to have a very keen eye on and look at that and scrutinize whether that position must continue or if there's a different way to do it. And I know from what I've read that the county did that over the last couple of years with, you know, consolidating certain departments, eliminating the planning function. So that has to continue. And when it comes to being a city manager, that's always on my mind. Over the last 24 years, it's always on my mind. How do we make this sleeker and better at delivering service without adding expense to the organization?
Let's go back to, Tom, go ahead.
I'm sure in Kalamazoo, they had union groups in your employees. How did you handle collective bargaining? Were you directly involved in it? Did you have an outside law firm? Did you let your HR department do it? How did you do it?
All of those. So our negotiating team in Portage was just the three of us, the city manager, myself, and the deputy city manager, and the director of HR. And then we used a law firm to manage everything. In Kalamazoo, the team was much larger, you can imagine, with 6 different union groups. And so we did it that way with a team of, I think, 7 or 8.
We have 13.
Who would have been?
That's okay. It doesn't matter how many you have. What matters is that you're open and you communicate and you're transparent, I've found. In the city of Portage, it was a confrontational issue. Okay, so we didn't share information. We went in and we expected to go to arbitration. In Kalamazoo, it was much the same thing. But when you have budget deficits every year, everybody's got to sit at the table all the time. It seems like you get done with it and you resolve the deficit and then you're coming back and you're starting to talk about next year. So we were constantly in budget development. I found that when I worked in Parchment, we didn't have any union groups, but I treated it as we did. And we would lay out all the financials every year and we would talk about the budget specifically for those issues so that when the budget was made public, I didn't have disgruntled employees or I didn't have employees that were thinking, you know, this is going down the tubes, I'm leaving. Everybody was on the same page and everybody understood what the goal was and what the mission was. So I think if you have 13 or 30, it doesn't really matter as long as you have a very good relationship that you build over the years with those union leaders and the employees that work for you anyway.
Do you have anybody left on defined benefit in Kalamazoo and Portage, the bigger ones? Or was everybody on defined contribution?
No, everybody was on defined benefit except myself. I was on defined contribution. And then I hired a new finance director and put her on defined contribution. No more defined benefits.
Let's go back to employees. How would you, I'll just go with the actual question. Please describe the process you would utilize to recruit and select talented staff.
Well, the first step, I think, is always to look inward and develop your talent within your organization. Not when you're trying to get an administrator, you want somebody outside. But unless you have a program in place that you are consistent with year in and year out, and you can develop those, you know, those deputy directors or those employees that are doing engineering work, or I'm just throwing that off the cuff. Then you're working harder when you don't need to, I think, and you hand in hand have to plan for retirement in the same way, I think. So it's been my practice to utilize deputies and other department staff in different meeting situations, in employing their talents to different projects. Not that they might be the lead responsible employee for that project, but that they're at least part of the process, so they understand how it works, and they knew who I was, and they could talk to me whenever they wanted to, and I think that's very important. Another good strategy is, or a successful one that I've had, is to have a good relationship working with the Michigan Municipal League. You know, there's times where I'm very unhappy with the Municipal League and the service you get for what you pay. But there are times where I think that the opportunity to network with other local government officials and employees and city managers really helps you develop those relationships, so that if you do see, say, an assistant city manager in a different city who has been somewhere for 3 or 4 years and wants to take the next step, that person can easily contact you, and you can start to cultivate that kind of like that talent base, so to speak. So I always believe in looking inward first, and if you do a good job of developing your employees here, it shouldn't be that difficult to move people up or promote them when that opportunity comes available.
Okay. Dan, you look like you want to ask a question.
I do.
Okay.
I'm looking at this last job in Parchment. There's 19 full-time and 6 part-time employees and a budget of $2.6 million. And when I look at the quantum leap you'd have to make to be our CEO here, with 500 employees and a $40 million budget, 100,000 people, tell me why I would have confidence that you could do that.
Well, because it's kind of a step back. Kalamazoo is 81,000 with a $147 million budget and over 800 employees. So I worked there as the deputy city manager in a larger organization, and I feel like that experience, not to mention this experience working in Portage as the assistant, has well suited me, and I can be very successful here in this organization.
So you're saying your deputy job before this one qualifies you for this?
I think so, yes, because as I said, I was managing daily operations for that organization. All the department directors reported to me. I sat on municipal board, other boards, Downtown Development Board, the Southwest Michigan First Board. I sat on those boards and represented the city, and I also represented the city manager's office each Monday night that we met with our city commission. The city manager then took that and was able to focus on strategic planning, developing relationships with the university, and focusing his efforts in that way. So I think that experience would qualify me to run this operation.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to media. What do you see as the county administrator's role in communicating with the press and the public and the employees? What's your strategy, your communication strategy?
I'm not one that wants to assign an employee to be the communications person. So I always take that on as my own responsibility. And I think that it's important because, you know, when you're talking with, say, down in Kalamazoo, it's Channel 3, WWMT, that's probably the most active television news station. They want somebody that's accountable, and they want somebody that's credible on camera to pass on information. And having a staff employee do that just doesn't seem to satisfy them. So I do that firsthand. Secondly, I am the one that's accountable for the organization. In Parchment and Kalamazoo and Portage, I was media relations. I was the person that was accountable, and so I want to be that person. Today, there are so many different ways to communicate with all of the entities the 3 entities that you just laid out. Twitter, Facebook, the city's website. I even for a short period of time tried to do a blog, but it just took up so much time that I stopped doing that. But at the basic level, I think that the key word there is relationships, and you have to have a relationship with a person that's doing the reporting in your county or in your communities. You have to have relationships with the employees, so it's not a matter of coming to work in the morning, closing the door in your office, and then attending meetings and then going home. It's about being out in the community, being seen. I got the reputation of being an ambulance chaser in Parchment because the fire engines would leave the station, and as soon as they hit the sirens, I would know something was going on, and I would jump in my truck and follow them. Not because I was thinking I was going to grab a hose and start helping them, but I wanted them to see me out at the scene, and I wanted them to know that I was interested in what they're doing. The same thing with water main breaks or sewer breaks. I tried to be out there so that everybody could see that I was interested in what they were doing on a daily basis. And I think that's important because then they know I care, and they also know that if they have a question about something, they have no problem coming into my office and asking it. So I think that that's very important. So there's the public, there's the media, but I think there's another group that's very important, and that's the elected officials. And why I say that is because that's what usually got me into trouble over these 25 years. Every so often it was the one thing where somebody would run into somebody at the football game and say, hey, what's going on with this project? And that elected official didn't know the answer, and that could easily have been prevented if I had just done my work and been communicative with that group. So I've learned over the years to over-communicate with my bosses, and that means a weekly email update on what's happening in the organization. Even if it says nothing new on this issue, I'm at least reporting that to you or the elected officials I report to. And then there's a full-blown, detailed city managers or county administrators report that's put on every agenda so that you can read it, and it has details. You can ask questions in the public situation, or you can do it in my office privately. But then also the public can read that when they're looking through the agenda, and they can see, okay, this is what the CEO is up to and what the organization itself is up to. So there's that, and then there's the technology that you can employ to do, minute by minute information if you want to pass that along too.
Okay.
I want to take my turn, but I do have another question. So.
Go ahead, and then
Okay.
we'll go with Tom.
I want to go back to the deputy city manager. How long did you hold that position?
3 years?
3 years? It says 2003 to 2005. And why again did you leave that to go to City of Parchment?
The city manager there left. He was forced to resign, and so everybody in the city manager's office left at the same time. So I took the opportunity to start my consulting business, which I still have today.
So you left the deputy, I'm just trying to get it, I'm
Yeah.
dancing. Yeah, you left the deputy city manager of your own free will? You just decided
Yes.
to start your own company, or?
No, I saw the writing on the wall and decided I wanted to leave, yes, and take that opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes. Tom?
You'd
And then
mentioned,
Tom.
your company, which is the Civic Quest. How taxing is that on your time? What does that, would that impact your ability to serve the county here?
No, not at all. I have a partner, and we split up the work when we have a job. But that's the key part, when we have a job. I've found that being a consultant is 90% marketing and sales and 10% doing the actual work. And so it's not very time consuming unless you have a lot of jobs. We do mostly executive recruitment around our area or organizational planning. We even worked for a private company, a water company called American Water, because they wanted to expand into Michigan and they wanted to find out how to navigate Southwest Michigan. So we helped them with that. But that was, a number of years. I'd say maybe 1 or 2 projects a year I've been doing. There were times in Parchment where I had no projects at all. And that always was a secondary thing to the time and effort that I had to spend in Parchment. So I would, that's a long answer, but no, it wouldn't affect my work here, and it would definitely take a back seat
Okay, thank you.
if I even continued to do it.
Tom, I'm sorry, skip.
Well, Traverse City and Grand Traverse County keep getting nominated as a good place to live, and the Record Eagle today, which is also represented here, they published a forum piece by Kent Wood. He's the government representative at the chamber, And he says the new administrator should be ready for growth and development, willing to work with those who are ready to invest in this community, whether it's through new businesses, housing opportunities, workforce development, and so on. Now, while you wouldn't be directly responsible for all that, who becomes the new administrator is, in their view, is going to be a vital part of how this economy changes, and basically they say adapting to changing dynamics of our regional economy. So I mean, you saw the paper mills become obsolete in Parchment, and you've seen the inner core of Kalamazoo come back to life. Companies like Bell's Brewery, for example. What do you think is wrong with what we have? Why should it be changed? Because if you look at our downtown, it's one of the most vital downtowns in the whole state. And that one of the last comments that was said about the city was now we're redevelopment ready. I think that kind of strikes me odd. We don't have a bunch of obsolete businesses in a downtown that's vacant. So
Well, you're asking the wrong
yeah.
guy. I'll tell you why. It's not up to me.
Well, the
It's up
chamber
to
is
you. It's up
talking
to
about
you.
you today, so.
Well, it's
Yeah.
up to you, the elected officials, to decide how you're going to, how you see your community, your county and your city. The leaders in Traverse City might see it completely different than the way you see it. They might all see it completely different than the way the media sees it, or private investment interests downtown might see it. But it will be inherent upon the next person that comes in here to be able to facilitate that strategy. If it's a, no, we don't want any more, we like it the way it is, let's keep it beautiful downtown strategy, then somebody has to know how to deal with that, because it's not going to be universal. Not everybody's going to jump on that boat and say, hey, you're right. That 100 acres I have over there that I bought and I've been sitting on for a development opportunity, you don't want that to happen? I agree with you. No, they're not. You're going to have to continue to politic that issue as you move forward. And so I think that's even more reason why you would be interested in somebody with a background in city management to understand how they're thinking, but also understand the details of economic development and downtown development and how that will affect the greater community. And I'm not talking about today, but maybe 10 years from now too.
Okay.
That's the other question I get a lot too is, how do you see our community 5 years from now? Well, that's not my job, and that's not my opinion to have right now. I can research things for the elected group, and I can say, here's what other communities are doing, but it's really up to the citizens that live here and you as the elected representatives to decide.
Okay. So we'll go with this question, but I'm going to change it a little bit. If someone were to Google search you, what would we find?
I think you've pretty much found it already, right?
We did.
Parchment?
Yes. Tell us about that. Tell us about what was found.
Well, I touched on it a little bit, but I think you're probably focusing on the credit card issue.
Yep.
The policy when I arrived there was if the employees used the credit card, which had to be obtained through a normal application process with your name and social security number and all that, if you use that credit card for a personal expense, then you would pay it back either through deductions on your payroll check or right then and there. And so that had been going on long before I was there. And when and it had worked out fine. It had not become a problem. So it never rose to the issue of concern that anybody said, oh, this is a problem, we have to change it. When I arrived, I was there 10 years and I went through 9 audits and the auditor never said anything. The credit card statements were put on the city's public agenda, so the city commissioners saw it and they never said anything about it. Nobody raised a red flag, nobody said anything. I didn't think a big deal about it. Should I have? Today, looking back, I could have prevented a lot of consternation, but I think it's very important to note that when it came to light, it was because an employee had begun to misuse the credit card. And so I had to discipline that employee. Instead of taking the tack that you see many administrators take, and that is to sweep it under the rug and take care of it, and that's it, I took the extra step of notifying the city commission of what had occurred, what action I was taking, what was happening since back to 1995 with the policy, and recommending that the policy be changed. And then, when that became public, that's when everything that you probably read in the newspaper started.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Sunny, do you want to ask your longevity questions?
Sure.
Go for it.
I've sat here long enough to be, this is the
175 years, right?
No, this is the sixth county administrator that I've interviewed for since I've sat here. I want to find stability and longevity for this community. I want to find a county administrator that's going to be here 10 years. Are you that guy?
Yes, I think I've proven it. The reason that I left Portage and Kalamazoo was to pursue something different. And it was because I want to be challenged in my professional career. I don't want to go to a community that's perfect and all you have to do is hold the reins and it's perfect every day. I want to be a change agent. I want to change things that are wrong, or I want to see solutions for things that could be better, and I want to make those changes. For example, when I arrived in the city of Parchment, they had just passed a tax increase just so they could keep things going, basic services. I immediately took their healthcare insurance, employee insurance system, and changed the whole program around to save $110,000 to the general fund on an annual basis without reducing benefits to the employees. I thought that was very important because I don't believe in eroding the benefits that the employees have and have counted on, and that's why they work there, because you want your organization to be a place where people want to work. The second example would be along the same lines. This police department there had been a combination full-time, part-time department, which meant that we were training a lot of young officers to come in at part-time positions, and as soon as they got trained and a little bit of experience, then these other big organizations would come in and they'd snatch them, and we'd have to start the process over again. The full-timers were approaching retirement age, and so we were getting more workers' comp claims and a little bit less interest in, chasing bad guys, so to speak. So the police chief was new. He had been there a few years. Very good person, a great police officer. The chief before him was there 20 years, and the chief before him was his father, and the chief before him was his grandfather. So it was a family business of being police chief, and they were phenomenal, and everybody loved them in the community. But when he left, and we were hit with the revenue losses, it was a very difficult situation. So I negotiated a cooperative agreement with the neighboring township for them to take over police services, and that was a very difficult sell to the community because they had been in love with the family business and the personal service they got, but we just couldn't afford it anymore. The training was gone, the equipment replacement budget was decimated, and so it just made all the sense in the world. But I went and did that because it was the right thing to do, and it was the best thing for the community. So getting back to the longevity question, I do what's right, and I feel like I want to challenge and I want to take on the next project to do what's right. And I spent 7.5 years as an assistant in Portage. I spent a couple of months short of 10 years in Parchment. So I'm in it for the long haul and not just some kind of stepping stone in a professional career.
Okay. So if you were offered the position, what is your timeline to be able to be here? What kind of obligations do you have to wrap up?
I just have one project going right now, and I could hand that off to my partner without any difficulties. So I'm not going to say tomorrow, but within a few weeks.
Okay. Do you see any obstacles at all to moving here to Traverse City?
No.
At all, no.
Except now all my children, I have 5, most of them have moved out. I would imagine that they'd want to move back in.
It's possible.
Or they want you to keep the house where they're at, and they'll just move in there, and you can go find your own.
Definitely possible.
Maybe, that's possible.
Yeah.
Invite him here in February.
I have a question.
Okay, go.
Let's talk a little bit more about the leaving, okay, the leaving. We've had a number of administrators that have left here. I can't imagine that it's easy to leave. Would that be fair? It's not easy to leave?
It depends on the situation.
Okay, was it easy to leave this time?
Parchment?
Uh-huh,
Yes.
okay, because it had gotten so uncomfortable?
It was difficult to write that first note. So we were in Tennessee for Thanksgiving, and we had a lot of time in the car to talk. And so we talked about this, and my wife finally looked at me and said, "Why are you killing yourself doing this if you know you don't want this anymore?" So we got back from Thanksgiving, and I sent a letter to the commission explaining that in a very forthright, positive way. There was nothing other than, I want to do the right thing for you. I don't want to go past my contract, which was like my 4th contract. I'm done, and I want to pursue other things. And that gives them plenty of time to look somewhere else. And I thought, maybe I was naive, I thought that that would be welcomed. And with the sentiment that there were new commissioners on that group that didn't agree with me and didn't want me around, I thought that would be, everybody would be a win-win, they'd call it, right? It's a win-win for everybody. And it didn't. So from December until March, it just degraded and degraded and degraded, where it was so stressful just to go to a public meeting.
Bob?
Was it the board that was, I guess,
Some.
okay.
And
Or
then-
was it more the public, or just a combination of both?
It was a combination, because there was a minority on the board that had it in for me, and they utilized their friends to help with the public scrutiny.
Okay.
Well, and I guess I would just like to say, I mean, I don't know if everybody here has had that kind of experience, but many of us have had that experience where something has gone south, and when it goes south, it can get ugly really fast. And so I respect your being so forthright about it. I'm sure it was difficult.
It was more difficult to leave Portage. I love that place, and I really, the city manager there was a mentor to me and taught me everything I know. It was very difficult to leave Portage, and I thought, maybe I'm making a mistake by going to Kalamazoo, but then when I left Kalamazoo, it was the same thing. I didn't want to leave Kalamazoo. Parchment, my time was up, and that was it.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any additional questions? Did I have one more? Did. You said something, I don't remember at what point, but I wrote it down. How would you make Grand Traverse County a great place to work, where people want to come and work for us?
I'm not that serious of a person. And what I mean by that is I have supreme confidence in myself, and I hardly let things get to me. So when I know something's getting to me, it's a difficult situation. But I'm very interested in the people that work for me. I don't believe in terminating people. I believe that if I have to terminate an employee, that's a signal that I failed as a manager. So if I have to go and work with an employee to be better or perform better, that's my responsibility, and I have to do it. So not only is it that it's a great place to work, it's a low stress place to work, because if you make a mistake, all you have to do is be forthright with me and ask for my assistance, and I will help you, and I believe in you. We had an employee in the city of Portage that was just struggling to do his job, and instead of replacing him, we mentored him for a little while. And after progress was made with that mentoring, we assigned him duties that maybe were more to his strengths as opposed to what was written on that job description page. And it worked out beautifully. And when that kind of thing happens, you really feel good about what you're doing professionally, because you're helping somebody else succeed. And that's what I really believe in. You have to help employees succeed. I'm not going to come in here and tell anybody in this organization that they're doing it wrong, that I know better than them. But I can at least make sure they understand I'm available to help them. And if they have questions, they should ask them of me, because I will welcome that opportunity to partner with them and help them succeed.
Thank you. That's a very positive way to go about it. Anybody else? Any more questions? What questions do you have for us?
I don't have many questions.
Any or
Any?
many?
I don't think any. I've done my research. I've had a couple weeks to prepare and understand. My wife and I travel up here all the time, so we know the area. In fact, we're going to be camping up here in June, at the end of June. So I'm pretty familiar with this area. I know Michigan, and I know the legislative situation in Michigan. I know what you're facing, and I really look forward to it.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dennis, very much.
Are we past the hour mark?
No,
No,
you did good.
we did great. Yeah, no, we did
Rock and
great.
rolling today.
Thank you, thanks for taking the time, thank you.
Good to meet you. Good to see you, Carol. Good luck.
Nice to see you.
Good meeting you, sir.
Nice to meet you, too. Yeah, good luck. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dennis. Ron?
Now we have a scheduled break.
This is a scheduled break.
This is a scheduled break.
How long is this break?
I don't know.
Tell the next military
Yeah, I'm gonna have a cigar.
Nearly not that bad.
No.
Carol,
Yes, sir.
well, depending on if the candidate's in the building or not, we could adjust to the time,
Is the
right?
candidate in the
I don't know,
building?
he's not scheduled till 6:10 because we had a bigger break
Yeah,
scheduled
but
here.
let's see if he's not here, because
Well-
if he's here, let's do it.
James probably went to look for him.
I didn't see anybody. James has been jumping up when he sees. Hi. Hi, nice to meet you.
Discuss it for another hour anyway.
Well, maybe.
Cheryl Follett. Nice to meet you.
Carol Crawford.
Hi, Thomas, I'm Dan, nice to see you. Yeah.
Hello.
You know, a lot earlier today than normal. Start hashing through things.
It's all right. But I can't start with Sunny because he just took a bite.
Oh, we just introduced her.
It's fine. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you are Thomas Hickner. Do you go by Tom or Thomas?
Tom.
Tom. Okay, Tom. So we will start by introducing ourselves, and since Sunny is chewing, we'll start with Tom. And
Well, my name is also Tom. So that's a good start. I've been here just short of a year and a half. Cheryl and I got elected in 2016, and been living here since '87. I live in Traverse City along with my wife, and we're enjoying it. And I'm very proud to be a member of this board.
We're proud to have you.
you're next, Dan.
I'm Dan Lathrop. I've lived here since 1975. I've been a commissioner for 6 years, and I make my living as a physician and surgeon.
I'm Ron Klaus, lifelong resident, Grand Traverse County. Been a commissioner, this is my 4th year. I've been in construction with my brother for 40 years.
I'm Carol Crawford. I've been in Traverse City for 15 years. This is my 4th year as a commissioner, my 2nd as the chair. I am a full-time mom and a part-time accountant.
I'm Cheryl Gore Follett. I'm a 1.5-year commissioner, 30-plus year attorney, and 4th-generation native.
Bob Johnson, I've been county commissioner 3.5 years, retired from the Coast Guard and work for Consumers Energy.
I'm Sonny Wheelock. I've been a county commissioner 18 years. I'm a third-generation owner of a welding fabricating company locally, and my family's lived in this community for 175 years.
Sunny's our historian.
What's that?
You're our historian.
Yeah, well, only because I feel old.
Okay. So we do have your resume and your background, but tell us about your professional career path and your career goals, and how do you feel you would fit with this county, and how would this county fit with you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for including me in the short list. This has been would be a great opportunity, I think, to help work with you in serving the people of Grand Traverse County. I have not done an interview like this since 1975. And so if I'm a little rusty here and there, just bear with me. On the other hand, I was thinking today that I have attended over 800 County Board of Commission meetings. So I am comfortable being around county commissioners. Let's see, in terms of my background, my resume pretty much speaks for itself. I served 24 years as county executive in Bay County. Bay County, as you know, is very similar in many ways to Grand Traverse County in terms of population, size, and budget. When I look at the geography of Grand Traverse, it's much different. Bay County has some of the best farmland in the country. In the case of the city of Bay City, it was the 2nd largest city in the state of Michigan in 1880 because they were cutting timber. Prior to being elected in Bay County, I served 10 years in the legislature, including 8 years as the chairperson of the House Agriculture, Forestry, and Minerals Committee. And before that, I worked 4 years for the Senate Fiscal Agency as a fiscal analyst. My responsibilities were focused on state, local, and state federal relations. Every bill that went through the state Senate during that 4-year term, I would have read and analyzed in terms of the cost implications to local government. And during that time was also when the President Reagan had been elected, and there was a lot of changes going on with the federal-state relations. And at that time, the accounting system in the state of Michigan did not have a good way of tracking federal revenues. We knew that there was federal money in an appropriation, but it didn't say where. And as part of my graduate program at Western, I did the equivalent of a thesis and put together what is now the method that tracks all of the federal revenues, which is about 25% of the federal budget, or the state budget. Before that, it doesn't show up in my resume because I was able to get my 4-year degree in 7 years. And,
It happens.
I worked political campaigns. I also worked for our former Congressman Bob Traxler in his congressional office. I did constituent relations along with campaign work. In terms of this job in relation to my experience, I view county government and the role of a county administrator is not a political job. It's an administrative responsibility, and I think I understand that very clearly. One of the reasons why I left the legislature in 1992 was because of the politics that was going on in Lansing. Specifically, I went through an experience. I was along with Representative Banstra on legislation that was going to reform medical malpractice, because at that time medical malpractice laws in Michigan were not working well. And we spent a lot of time, put together a very good proposal, and it ended up getting sidelined. And at that point, I thought, do I really want to keep doing what I'm doing? That, along with the fact that we had 3 young children under the, 92, that Andy was 8, Mark was 6, and Ann was 4. And the Bay County at that time, 1992, there was a lot of controversy. The county executive that had been serving for the last 4 years had really alienated not only the other county-wide and county elected officials, but equally problematic how they worked with the townships. There are 14 townships in Bay County, 4 cities, and he fundamentally did not understand how to work with them. And so that was one of the first priorities that we had, was trying to get some cooperation and communication going, and I think we accomplished that. I'm going to really work on being succinct, by the way.
It's okay. Don't worry. That's fine. Thank you.
Could you ask him to answer the last part of the question,
that's
which was,
right.
how are you a good fit for the county, and how is the county a good fit for you?
Oh, okay. I think I'm a good fit for the county because, number one, I understand public finance and how to manage an organization that spends, well, your general fund is about $36 million, if I'm not mistaken. I understand personnel very well. We had 12 labor contracts, and working with the employees is very important to get anything done. And in terms of just being able to work cooperatively, I think my resume demonstrates that I've had numerous involvement in many efforts of collaboration, and I'm real comfortable with that. I am not a top-down, hard-nosed type of manager. In terms of the fit, my fit to Grand Traverse, this is a beautiful community, and there are, my observation, which is, it's not a policy issue, it's a policy issue, not an administrative issue, but the challenge that you folks have, or we would have if I were selected, is to how to deal with the growth. That's one of the things. Nancy and I talked about moving back to the east side of Bay City because instead of a 5-minute commute, it was a 12-minute commute. And,
Sorry for your luck.
Yeah, but I think up here there's of everything that I've read about Traverse City, and I've followed it over the years just because I'm interested in Michigan history and Michigan communities. So I think I'd feel real comfortable with it. A difference between Bay County and Grand Traverse, just based on the responses of the commissioners, other than Commissioner Wheelock, is that we do not have a lot of people moving in. We don't have growth has always been a challenge for us, but I'm sure
There's no shortage of growth here.
Yes, I noticed that, just coming down to 37.
Can you just explain to us a little bit the difference between an elected county executive and an appointed county executive as far as how they deal with the board? Is there a difference?
I think substantively, no. If you want government to work well, I don't think there's a big difference. Bottom line is that the Board of Commissioners, whether you're in an elected county executive system or an appointed administrative system, have the final say-so. The county executive under Act 139, there are 2 counties that have elected county executives, Oakland and Bay, under Act 139. And then Act 293, which is the Charter County Act, it would be Wayne and Macomb. I had veto power. I vetoed one measure in 24 years, and that was a pay raise issue, and it was just the manner in which we were able to work it out. Over the years, a community the size of Bay County really doesn't need an elected county executive for a variety of reasons. But it was established back in the late 70s because of the political turmoil that was going on and accusations of boss rule and whatever. But bottom line, I don't think that there are any major differences because, again, if I want to accomplish something as an elected county executive, I still had to get 4 votes. And generally, we were able to get 6 or 7 votes, and that's the way I would conduct myself if selected for this job.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if there was any difference.
I would say, if I could, the other big difference we're under what is called a unified county government. And under that, all of the boards and commissions were abolished and consolidated under the Board of Commissioners. And unlike every other county. But I don't think that's a significant difference.
Okay. Let's go with, based on your research of our county, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for our county at the moment?
Well, for county government, I think based on what I've read, and I would have to engage in some listening with not only commissioners but staff and residents about getting a real handle on it. But clearly, your pension issue is something that has been a real challenge. The relationship with the employees, because like in Bay County, we went for 6 years not being able to give our employees a pay raise. And that was a challenge. Here, I think, as I mentioned, growth. My philosophy over time as county executive was to keep focused on county government doing what it's required to do under the law, statutory law, and not get involved in things that might be fun to get involved in, but really are not outlined in state law. Probably the best example of that would be economic development, economic growth. Rather than having a separate staff in the county working on economic development, we allocated money to Bay Future and asked them to lead that effort, where we would cooperate with them and be supportive of them, but not, we would, trying to think, is that rowing the boat or steering the ship?
I think we get it.
Yeah. So those are the top 3 at this point. And as I mentioned, I think the growth, collaborative discussions, and the relationship between the county, within the county government, as well as relationships with the city and the townships. And I have read that, there certainly is a difference between living in Traverse City versus farther east. I think it's east. Yeah.
So do you believe that the county should not be in the brownfield and EDC business?
No, I think that the state laws for both brownfields and for EDCs does play a role in accomplishing what are required under statute. Just like a land bank authority. One of the things that I thought we should do in Bay County, and we finally did, was establish a land bank, which has proved to be great potential. Same thing with brownfields. Both of those statutes contemplate county government being involved in that, and in the case of EDCs, they were originally created to be so they could issue, primarily issue bonds. That does not happen as much as it used to, but there may come a time, and if there is, you've got that, as they say, tool in the toolbox.
We have very active brownfields and land banks.
And I actively participated in not only the land bank, but a host of other work groups and committees outside of the county.
Okay, Bob?
I see that your defined benefits funded 112%. How did you get there?
Well, Bay County has its own pension system as opposed to MERS. We did.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Here, here. Congratulations.
And, we did give some thought about MERS. I actually worked with the guy that is currently the head of 30 years ago.
Just say no.
Yeah, no, we didn't, because the system we have was not broken. And I think that happened as a result of the Board of Commissioners appointing people that understood what their fiduciary role was on the pension board, and then the pension board in turn making sure that they hired the appropriate financial advisors and had a diversified portfolio, and that's what happened. I mean, our pension system did take a hit, like everyone did.
Everybody.
But the track record has been very good, and that's fortunately an issue that we're one of the few, Bay County I should say, is one of the few counties that doesn't have that problem. We made some changes along the way to deal with how many years to be vested, what the multiplier was, and we did it in a way that didn't adversely affect the current employees, but
Are the current employees still under defined benefit?
yes, everybody is. And my personal view is that I know why they think that going into a defined contribution system is a good idea. But if you have a properly managed defined benefit and you fund it, I think it's just in terms of the investment strategies there. You know, I know this. I wouldn't want to be guiding my own investments to the tune of my pension that I was under.
Thank you.
Okay. Dan?
In labor relations and unions, it seems like you've had a lot of experience in that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you believe in hiring an attorney to assist you in those endeavors?
Yes, we did it three different ways. When I first started, we had a contract with Peter Cole out of Lansing, and Peter does a lot of labor contract work throughout the state. The problem was that he was in Lansing and we were in Bay City, and the commute times, and he also did not have a good relationship with the bargaining units. I don't think it's the role of management is to treat employees fairly. And in the case of Cole, there was just, we thought we could do better. And in fact, the second personnel director that I hired had some experience in negotiating contracts, so we did it within. And then this last contract, we had 90 contracts negotiated. I did not participate in those hour-to-hour meetings for a variety of reasons. But our last set of contracts was actually done by my third personnel director, who was an attorney and
Was an attorney.
yes. So I think that there are advantages of bringing in somebody from outside, because once ever the dust settles, the personnel director has to work with the employees. But if you have good collective bargaining, you shouldn't have those kind of bad relations. And so I've always felt very comfortable working with the bargaining units. The bottom line is that you follow the contract. And whatever contracts you negotiate and agree to, you follow them.
Tom?
Well, thanks for talking about that. Is there still about 550 employees in Bay County, or is it closer to 500? Or
It's around 550, and in the summer, it goes up to about 700. The county executive has responsibility for about 350 direct reports. And our organizational chart was almost identical to yours in terms of departments.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Yes.
What did you have for Human Resource Department? Because we're lacking a director at the moment. So.
Well, I read that a couple months ago that of all the critical department director positions you can fill, finance and personnel are the two keys. I don't want to diminish the role of a health director or a 911 director because they are very important too. But what helped me immensely year in and year out was the role of the personnel director, and I had 4. We had a policy of always hiring the most qualified and experienced person I could get, and I was lucky of the 4, 2 came from the private sector. One had worked for Dow Chemical and the other had worked for General Motors. And the interesting aspect of that was that they brought some private sector perspective on how you can mold an organization to perform services.
So the Dow and the GM one had collective bargaining experience?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Now, in fact, the one GM, he had 24-hour security for a year at one point, so, which is a little scary. He never had that problem with Bay County.
Our largest department is the Sheriff's Department, and the undersheriff oversees a lot of those employees' human resource issues. But for the rest of the organization, we've been without a consistent HR director for a while now, since the end of 2016.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Mayor or Doctor, is that where am I going here? Go ahead and ask me the question. I interrupted you.
Okay, well, I was starting about the Sheriff's Department. How big a portion of the budget in Bay County was the Sheriff's Department? Here it's about a third.
It's about the same, and that's what I was going to respond is that as the county executive, I did not have authority, nor did I attempt to have any direct control over the other department elected officials, including the Sheriff Department. And so the responsibility for managing the personnel within the Sheriff Department rested with the sheriff and his undersheriff, and that's the way I would approach it. The HR director should serve as a resource and to make sure that they've got following all of the appropriate laws.
Because even in our health department, we have a HR person.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and our road commission is separate. Was the road commission separate in Bay
Yes.
County? Okay.
Yeah.
There's only a couple cases in Michigan where I think the county board took over the road commission.
That's correct.
God, I'm glad we haven't.
And I apologize, said doctor, and
Yeah.
That's okay.
that's why I hesitated
He
there.
deserves that.
I'll take it as a compliment.
There we go. Okay, let's go with the county administrator's role with the media. How do you see the county administrator's role in communicating with the press and the public and the employees? How do you go about that?
Well, I think we were able to have a very effective communication process, not only with our employees and the community at large. Unfortunately, I'm very surprised at how you are able to have a newspaper put out every day, and I've been reading it. We have M Live, which used to be part of the Booth papers.
Take note, Matt, he's the one that's reading it every day.
Yeah.
The press is here.
And, but I was, for the first, 18 years, at least, we had a full-time reporter assigned to county government. And so I was very used to working with the news media, not only in print, but also radio and TV. And my philosophy always was that you give them the information they want, answer the questions that they have to offer, and if they don't like the question, answer a different question sometimes. But I think overall we had a very good relationship, and that would be something that I would certainly continue to do. Social media and the internet is a new frontier for a lot of people, but it's a very important way of communicating with millennials and just the way people now. You know, I remember when the first time I ever heard of the internet. I was in Palisades, New York, at the IBM facility, and they said something about the internet. And now look at what we're doing. And then we had our own TV station, so everything was broadcast, and we had our departments put together regular programming every month on what they were doing, accomplishments.
You have social media that you use at Bay County?
Yes, yeah, we had a couple of staff that we hired specifically because they understood how to use an Apple iPhone as well as do a Facebook page.
So a couple 25-year-olds, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's I'm not sure how old Jason was. I think he's 30-something. But and it can be a very, very effective way, and that's the way people are learning about it. And I think it's important that people know what's going on in their government. That's one of the reasons why we've got some of the turmoil that we have, is that people are really disillusioned with. And local government, I think, is probably the best place to get something done.
Dan?
Tell me about a time in your career when you were trying to get something done, a program done, or some job you thought had to be done, and it failed. And what you did about that and what you learned from it.
Well, one example, probably the best one that I can think of, when I was in the legislature, I sponsored a bill. I had a constituent whose husband had left town and she had no idea where he was. And under Michigan law, she could not change her son's name to her last name without the permission of the vanished father. And so I introduced the bill, and it passed the House 102 the first session. It passed again with 100 votes. Didn't get taken up in the Senate. Didn't get taken up in the Senate the second time around, and then the third time around it passed unanimously. In the legislature, being patient and persistent is one of the key aspects of being successful. There was a Speaker of the House by the name of Bill Ryan, who was considered one of the best speakers of the House, and his talent was that he would negotiate, and finally the other side would say, "I give up. I'll agree to anything." And then I had another bill. We recodified the Management and Budget Act, which was about 102 pages of laws governing finance and all the financial aspects of state government, and that took about 3 years to get through. I had more bills become law in my tenure than anybody except the chairman of the Appropriations Committee.
So patience and persistence.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, and that would be that's always been the way. And we worked for many years on having a civic arena built, and that took a lot of work, but we were able to do it.
Thank you.
Tom?
Well, looking back to the banking and mortgage crisis, which had a lot to do with why our pension fund had difficulties, what do you see as far as what currently is happening and in the future for revenue sharing from the state to the county level? Do you see changes, in the future? Do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects. Number one is that the economy is cyclical, and the good times are not going to continue regardless. Some of the monetary, the fiscal policy at the federal level will keep things going for a little longer. I mean, anytime you do a tax cut the size that they've done, you're going to get some stimulus going on. But the problem is that we've got almost full employment. In terms of the state of Michigan and revenue sharing, Michigan's economy will slow down, and because of the fiscal policies that they have, I think local governments will always be often getting the short end of the stick, despite the fact that almost a significant number of the legislators are former county commissioners and city commissioners, which is somewhat odd. I read yesterday that there's a lawsuit that has been filed by, I believe it's Dr. Moog from Wayne State. No, it's not Moog. And he's challenging the state adhering to the Headley Amendment. The Headley Amendment passed when I was working for the fiscal agency. We actually won a national award for our analysis of that, and the basis of that lawsuit is that the state has not been meeting the requirement of paying for the proportion of state spending.
So the lawsuit's been filed?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay, but Headley is definitely part of the problem there. So for a place like Grand Traverse County, where our growth is exceeding some downtown and county areas, what do you see as a way that we can sort of insulate ourselves from the next dip in the economy? What do you see this area being known for as far as jobs and industry or different types of businesses?
Well, number one is that what I noticed, the difference between Bay County and Grand Traverse County is that your property tax revenues grew at over 3%. That's very good, and that's because of the new construction and the sale of homes. One of the reasons why cities are having the problems that they're having is that people aren't selling and moving in and out, especially the older cities. As far as strategies, one of the first thing that I would recommend, or one of the first things that I'd recommend, is making sure that we had a fiscal strategy that looked out 5 years, that involved employees, the other elected officials, and the community to come up with a strategy, a fiscal policy that assumed that there weren't going to be tax increases, and that I think the key going forward in the next couple of years is not to increase spending in areas getting into new ventures. And that's the reason why I mentioned not keeping focused on what the core mission of county government is.
And putting the economic development into Bay Future?
Yes.
Yeah, so that you didn't have to run that.
Right.
Yeah.
Not only that, but also just in terms of the county government doesn't have to be involved in everything, shouldn't be involved in it. There are things that are best left either to the city or to the township or somebody other than the county. But that's a decision that the Board of Commissioners makes.
One of those areas here was animal control. We almost cut it down to nothing, and now we've built it back up to 3+ employees, 3.5 employees, something like that. But the Sheriff's Department didn't want to have it, so now it's with our Health Department. How did you handle that, the animal control?
Well, having been in elective office like each of you, I had a responsibility that when somebody called me, I answered the phone and talked with them. And we used to average 2 to 3 phone calls a day coming in the early 90s on animal control. And one of the problems was that the guy that was heading up the animal control department had virtually no background in what he was doing. He had actually, he just didn't have the background. And administratively, the department wasn't being run well. So we were able to move him out of that position, bring in a new person. Actually, she was the former head of the Humane Society. And then we started increasing staffing, and we built a new animal control building. And I think that's a core mission, and it's probably, our sheriff had no interest in being responsible for it either.
Okay, let's go with this one. if someone were to Google search you, which we probably have,
I have.
and you've probably Google searched us, what will we find?
Well, depending on how long you want to spend, you can find a lot, because there's been a lot of news articles that I've been in.
We're interested in the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's only been one story that has surfaced that has been reported regarding me, which was the county clerk's court case. And that lawsuit was filed, it was the county commission that had the final say on the staffing. We had, initially, we had made a decision to reduce staffing in all of the departments, including the clerk. That happened. She quit doing work. The commissioners said, wait a minute here, she had a vacancy, and so then they took the second position away. That went on for 5 years or so with limited staffing, and we had done an analysis of how busy things were. She ended up filing a lawsuit. I was brought into it because I was the county executive, but I didn't have the say-so over restoring that. That was a board decision. But ultimately, we were able to get that court case worked out.
So that was the only reason that you were named? Because you were the county executive?
The county executive.
Okay.
Over the years, I think we accomplished a lot of good things, and one of the things that I avoided was getting into stupid fights in the news media. And I took that, I had that philosophy in the legislature. If I had a bill on the House floor and there was an objection, by the way, I served with Judge Powers. He was there when I was going to stop by and say hello to him. But I had a philosophy that if there was a problem with the legislation, rather than debate it on the House floor, we'd just pass it for the day, and then I'd talk to whoever had a problem. And that's the way I generally work. I don't like getting into drawn-out public debates where it's just not the way to do it. But you want to make sure you're consistent in public as well as in private.
Okay. Got that one. How would you attract staff to work at Grand Traverse County? We've had a lot of turnover, mostly in department heads. How would you recruit and select talented staff? And how would you make this a great place to work? People would want to work for us.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think having some stability and not having controversy and having a reputation that you're hiring the most qualified and experienced people is one. Certainly the fact that, a lot of people other than, a lot of people would like to live here, especially if their families are young enough that they can move. Now that they've got children that are in their high school, that becomes more problematic. But a good search effort should be able to produce good candidates, and they don't all, there's a real problem finding people that have experience in the public sector. The management and personnel aspects are the same in both the public and private sector, but the opportunity to learn the trade of being a health director, for example, it was hard. We had a health director, 911 director, but again, if you do a good search and you're patient and nurture having good staff underneath, so that you always have a situation where if something happens to the health director, the assistant health director or somebody can fill in. Always have a plan B. We had to do that. We did that with everybody, including me.
Okay. You want to ask your longevity question?
Sure.
Oh. I don't want to deprive you of the opportunity.
There you go. With this round of interviews, we are working on selecting our 6th county administrator since I've been sitting in this chair. I think it's absolutely critical that we find someone that can bring stability and longevity to that position. So what I'm asking is, if I'm looking for a county administrator that's going to serve this community for 10 years, are you that guy?
Well, 10 years is a long time, but, you know, if my health, my Uncle George is 95, and I have his bloodline. 75 ain't old at all. Actually, I don't consider 75 that old. Actually, I'd be 74, but, and that's not old. But Commissioner, I couldn't say that, yeah, I'll commit to 10 years, but I can say this, is that I wouldn't take the job and quit in 3 years. You know, Nancy and I had talked, you know, at least a 5-year horizon. One of the things that I've thought about is to make sure that bringing along somebody that I know that you've got your number 2 position is vacant, and you talked about having that filled. One of the strategies would be to fill it with somebody that you could have some continuity with, the right. That might be a strategy to employ. So, but I think, especially given your context, I can understand why you asked that question.
Well, in bringing up the deputy administrator, in those 6 county administrators, only twice have we ever had a deputy administrator. Do you think we need a deputy administrator to do this job?
Well, I did not have a deputy county executive. We tried to have as flat of an organization as possible. We had 12 departments, about 35 divisions, and then the people that did the work in the trenches. So that would be something that I would need to get my arms around before I would make a decision on how to do that, whether or not I actually would recommend to the board that you authorize one to be had. Because given the 12 departments, I had no problem keeping in touch with and communicating with my 12 department heads. My predecessor, just as an aside, didn't have his first staff meeting until the 3rd year into office. We had monthly meetings.
Wow.
And then we had regular, you know, if a department was running well, I didn't interfere, but I did keep track of what they were doing.
Dan?
You brought up your age, 74, 75. I hope I grew up to be just like you.
In 10 years. In 10
years.
In 10 years.
Yeah. I don't, you know, I have to, I don't feel like I'm 64 years old. I really don't. Nancy accuses me of acting like a 14-year-old but I don't feel that way at all. And partly because we have 3 30-something children, and if nothing else, they will let us know when we're being old.
So is there anything that would, if offered, is there anything that would cause you not to accept the position? Any obstacles that you see to moving here, or, and what's your timeline?
I do not think there is any obstacles. In fact, Nancy said to me today as we were leaving the hotel, "Isn't this weird? We've been talking about this for years, and now it's actually happening." That is me having an interview like this. And so there, we've talked a lot about it, and we have a son that lives in just moved from Connecticut to New Jersey, a son that lives in San Francisco, and a daughter that lives in Detroit. And the fact that you've got a first-class airport here was important, an important consideration. As far as timeline, all I have to do is make sure that the dishes are done every day, and I can. I'm not working in the Detroit area doing some of the community development housing work that I was doing. I decided that I ought to stick with what I know. I'd love to do what you do, but I don't have any money, and I really don't know how to do the work. So otherwise, I'd be doing that right now. So, but we're flexible, and we just have to work it out.
Okay.
Our house is in a position where we're in a neighborhood that I'm certain that we would sell it very quickly. So.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Everybody good? Anybody, Ron?
Oh, good.
Quiet? Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
No. I just enjoyed the interview. I've been looking forward to this just because it was challenging.
You did fine.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
So
Thank
you and
you.
your wife are here staying in one of the hotels?
We did. We came in last night. We have a number of friends that live up here, and a friend of mine that I actually first met in 1975 at the Senate Fiscal Agency has a place up on right before Sutton's Bay, and we were there.
Oh.
It'd be really nice to be able to have his place. But, but yeah, we're at the Park Place, which we stayed there once years ago, shortly after it was renovated. I remember when it was being renovated. Mm-hmm. We used to come up here every year for Michigan Municipal Risk Authority. That was one of the things that's not on my resume. I was on the Finance Committee too.
Nice.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
very
much for
much.
coming.
So we'll take just a short break. Everybody knows what to do with the board back there.
Can we do it now?
You can do whatever you want.
And then how long are we going to be frogging around?
I'm going to do.
We'll come back and discuss right away. Yep.
This what we said. Yeah. You do too?
Yeah, here. You did.
here for whenever anybody watches this. Well, what I had everybody do is to write their district number next to their top 2, 3, or 4 picks, so that maybe something would stick out and be an easy elimination or, And so that's what we have. And so what do we think? Would we like to bring back all 4?
I recommend bringing back all 4 of those
Okay,
for a second round of interviews.
I would support that.
okay.
That'll be my
How does
motion. How
everybody
about
else
that?
feel about
I
that?
don't think so. I think we should just bring back 3, honestly. Yeah. Let's make a tough decision now.
Well,
You bring back
Dan.
4, you're going to have all those people involved in the public meeting. It's going to be harder to make the decision then.
One of the criticisms that you had of the last time was that we didn't interview the people but one time for a very short period of time. So we've only interviewed these people for an hour or less. That doesn't seem like a fair opportunity to make a decision.
I think it's important to get to know them more
Bring 4 back.
in another setting besides this one.
So are you willing to do another interview after the second one we're having?
If we have to.
Maybe.
I mean,
Whatever it takes.
Oh, that's
All right,
possible
yeah,
too.
I'm on
We've
board
got,
with
to
that.
me, I've got nothing written in stone that says, I just,
Okay,
I mean-
I feel better now.
Yeah.
If we have because that's
Because
4
we got
people,
this
is a
so
lot
that
of
it's
people.
pretty clear that,
Yeah.
that it's down to 4.
Yeah.
I think even if we go through the next part and it's pretty clear that it's down to 2, again, we're like, yeah, it's not so much that, not so much that, but these 2, we got to really decide. We can certainly have them come back again. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm on board. I just want to tell you, I don't like the idea of having 4 people and then have to pick one of the 4 the next time.
We might not pick
Me
one,
neither.
we might pick 2.
have you ever watched American Idol? They just do finals. You know?
Okay, all right, I'm on board.
Are you,
Yep.
so we
Was
have,
there a second then to that?
I think
Yes, I second it.
Cheryl.
He-
Bob moved it,
James,
Cheryl
do you have an
seconded it.
opinion about this?
You want to, weigh in? What do you think?
I'm perfectly comfortable 3 or 4. I think that is fine to bring 4 back. It will make for a longer evening, it will make for a longer morning. But to
That's
your
okay.
point, this is a really important decision
It
you're
is.
making. I would caution that, at the end of that I would encourage the board to have a mindset that you're going to try and get to a candidate. Having said that, if you can't and you need to bring back 1 or 2 or 3 again, this is really important.
It is.
I do encourage you, though, to have that mindset, because the longer this goes for you and the candidates, the more difficult it is to keep people interested
Right.
and involved. But we've got 2 days planned. We can keep rolling. We can even talk some more about, do you do a 2-part meeting on that second day, or do you extend to a tentative 3rd day if you think you may need it? So I would like to have that opportunity to talk to the chair about the format, and she can spread to the rest of the board. We've talked about tentative what the format is. I think we're pretty clear that first evening will be a public meeting and a public interview with an opportunity for public involvement. Our intent was the next day, the next morning, for the board to meet, receive the information from that meeting, interview again, and then take a decision, or not take a decision. We may want to consider, if that's still the format we're doing, do we want to tentatively plan to reconvene on attachment to those 2 days to potentially bring back 2? We can make that decision. You guys can talk about it. I can offer a recommendation. I just would like to keep the momentum going as we go into those 2 days. I'd be happy to receive feedback. Summary: 4 candidates, great. Make sure that we are keeping our momentum as we enter our next phase.
Tom?
Yeah, well, before we got started, I thought 3 candidates, because that's a cut, halfway cut from 6. But now, talking about some of these other ideas that James has, if we start that last day, which was the final day that we'd already scheduled, and we could make it into 2 sessions, we could go from 4 to 2, and then have a short second session to decide among the final 2, rather than hold people over for another day or schedule another day or elongate the process in days and time.
So set aside that entire day in case we move to 2 and just want to talk to them just one more time just to reinforce.
I would support that.
You'd be
I would
okay
make
with
that
that?
time available because I agree that it would be nice not to have to bring people
Yeah,
back
'cause we don't
again.
have to do it.
Yeah.
But we could
Might not.
allow
We
for
might,
it.
we might
Yeah.
get to 1, but if we don't, make sure all the candidates are available for that whole day.
I mean,
that
the
we're
other
available.
side of me is gonna say, if we've interviewed them twice, then what else can you ask them that we haven't asked
That third
already
time.
or got a feel
Well,
for?
or
But I agree, let's set it
Or even
aside
for
to
just
have that
discussion
opportunity.
among
Yeah.
ourselves. Even
Yeah.
for just to leave and go to lunch and let it sit for a little bit, come back 2, 3 o'clock and go, okay, now.
Yeah, just,
So how are we gonna have the public I'm confused. I wanna hear what the public said.
Correct.
I want some of the leaders to interview these guys and.
I think James has that figured
Yeah.
out for Thursday night.
For the evening session,
So they'll interview all 4 of them?
all 4 of them would be interviewed in the public session. I was actually looking at your training room. I think that would be
Is
a
it more
good
of a meet and
room.
greet or a,
Well, it would be both a meet and greet, but it's also, each candidate would be asked questions, and the public can provide questions on little cards to me that I can ask.
Great.
And then I encourage you to put a press release about it. I encourage you to invite whoever you'd like to it. Then there'll be exit cards that will be given to the people in the audience that they can fill out and give comments. I will take that evening, not sleep, get all of that information put together in a report. You will then have that in the morning when you are also starting your interview with those candidates.
Can you get it to us that
I'm
night?
sorry. Will you quantify it in
Might
any
be
way?
the early morning hours. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Will you quantify it anyway? Like X number of people want this guy, X number of people want that
Well,
guy?
the cards will not specifically say, vote for one. The cards will ask for comments. I will take those comment cards and retype them in some form that helps you, pro, con, by candidate, that you can hopefully scan quickly. I don't anticipate that I will have an overwhelming number of cards.
Right.
We've done this before, and it's reasonable. It's a lot of work on my end, but it's not unreasonable to receive it in that morning and take 20 minutes and review and get a good flavor of the feedback.
And we're starting at 8 o'clock in the
we can
morning.
push it down to 9.
No, we can
No,
push
8.
it down to 8.
Fine.
Yeah, because.
And just be here
And be
earlier.
done.
I got
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, and not
before
schedule a
9.
candidate until
9.
30 minutes,
Right.
1 hour later.
That's fine.
In my mind, I'm thinking that, I guess all along I thought we were going to get to 3. Pros and cons for 4, I understand. I'm thinking in my mind that we do the public process, if you will, on that evening. And, we will ask questions. The public will have opportunity to ask questions. We'll get the feedback cards that James is talking about. The next morning, we'll each have the opportunity to review those comment cards prior to inviting a candidate in to ask questions. And some of those questions may be driven by the comment cards.
Correct.
Which I would hope. And then at the end of that process, maybe we have a little time to digest those. And then as far as our second meeting for that day, obviously the candidates will be welcome to be here, but I don't know that necessarily becomes an interview process. I think that becomes a deliberation process,
I see.
in my mind.
Can I ask a question about how you all envision that next opportunity? Because I think a half an hour per candidate is going to be a lot of time. I mean, we had an hour. It's
On the
hard-
Friday?
Yeah. I mean, what are we going to ask them for an hour, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
except what came in public comment or the comment cards and.
I mean,
how
if we're
we-
thinking about, the next level of questions that we're going to ask, I mean, it seems like we ought to be thinking about what those questions are now and formulating those questions now.
I would think both. We will continue to do research, and I expect that the candidates will do research and be able to answer very specific questions as to Grand Traverse County and our relationship with that potential candidate.
Okay, well, I'm
least I
just
would
throwing
hope
it
that would
out
be
there
true.
that I think an hour per candidate
a
would
lot.
be excruciating, okay, to put
Not
them.
all of us.
on them and us,
This
right?
has been difficult
And,
already.
and so, you know, if we get here at 8, we've got the comment cards, we have a chance to kind of collaborate and talk about the direction that we think we're headed, maybe put our heads together on the questions that we might want to ask all of them, or general
But that part will
questions.
be public.
I understand that. And then at 9, we bring in the first candidate, 9:30 the next.
Got it.
10 o'clock the next, 10:30 the next. We can take a break for half an hour, have a cup of coffee, walk around the block, come back at 11, and be ready to deliberate. I mean, I don't want to prolong this,
That's fine.
right?
You wanted to move, because I guess I had it on there for 4, so we want us to, and I don't know where I got that time from. So you
No,
want to
it
just do it at 8?
starts at 8 in the morning.
8 in the
Yeah,
morning.
it was scheduled for 8 in the morning. Yeah.
I guess my point to the discussion is simply, we have the public process in the evening. The next morning, we review the comment cards. We do a short round of very specific questions for each candidate. And I'm thinking that the questions that I ask one candidate may not be the same as what I ask
agree.
the other. And then as far as the third meeting is strictly deliberation between the 7 of us.
Unless unless we're deadlocked, I mean, I would think we would know after that second interview, and we've had a chance to think, and we come back and we say, there's still 2 that we're really,
Well, then we deliberate about it. And at that
and then,
point,
and then
that's
maybe
when
we
do
ask
that.
them back. But
Maybe.
sounds like a plan.
Okay.
So I guess the only question is, do
So-
we do 3 or 4?
Well, my motion was 4.
The motion was
Motion
4,
was for
so we can vote
Yeah,
on it.
well, let's
All-
vote, and then if it doesn't, then we'll
All
just.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm
No.
opposed.
Roll call.
Yeah, do roll call.
Mayor,
No.
Gorfulet,
Yes.
Wheelock,
No.
Klaus,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Lathrop,
No.
Crawford.
Yes.
Motion failed.
Madam Chairman, I'd move we invite the top 3 candidates to come back for a second round.
I'll second that.
I would
Wait,
like
wait,
more, yeah, I would like more discussion then, if we're gonna just
yeah, let's
go
discuss.
with, because we just went with that,
Yeah.
and I would like to discuss why I had 4.
Okay.
You know, Dennis, to me,
Go ahead.
you know, brings that Michigan experience with them. That's just hard to.
Yes.
For the others that may have to get called up. You know, Greg is well qualified too, but to me, Dennis, to me, they were about even, I guess, as far as qualities, but then what put it over the top was the Michigan experience. But
And I thought that Dennis had good experience, not in his most recent job, but as the assistant city manager, deputy city manager of Kalamazoo.
Yep.
That was a big job.
Yeah.
And so I felt that experience was going to translate very well.
And I think there's a lot to be said for the way he attempted to leave there. You know, he gave them notice and it sounded like that didn't work out the way he had hoped it did, you know. I think the credit card thing was kind
don't
of silly
think
because
that's
that
an
was a
issue.
policy,
Yeah.
you know, so. But
I didn't consider that an issue at all.
I don't see any issue with those things. I don't think he's got the experience. He only had 2 years in the deputy position. And then he left angry from his next post.
I didn't get that impression, but,
Well, he quit.
right, but just because you feel that it's time to move on doesn't mean that you leave angry.
Well,
And so that would be something why I would want to bring him back so that we could get a better feel for that.
I just don't think he has the depth of experience that Greg Todd had. And, you know, Greg has handled, as a CEO, numbers akin to our numbers. And so I think he's well above Dennis, myself.
Any other discussion on it?
I guess I would just say that, you know, if he doesn't have the numbers now, he's not going to have the numbers down the road, so it doesn't make sense to me to bring him back and prolong it. Not to be too pragmatic, but if he doesn't have the votes now, I don't think it's going to change, so.
I'm always fighting for the underdog.
I know you are, you're a real underdog kind of guy, but
It's called.
Okay,
We have a
Bonnie,
motion.
let's do a roll call vote on this one.
So we're voting on the top three, right?
We're voting on bringing the top three
So,
back.
motion by Wheelock, seconded by Mayor?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Gore Follett,
Okay.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Crawford.
No,
Motion carries.
motion carries.
So we will put together a packet and invite the top three candidates for that June
7th and 8th.
7th and 8th meetings. The evening of the 7th will be an opportunity for both commissioners to ask questions and the public to ask questions.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Sonny. The 7th in the evening, the intent is not for commissioners to ask questions,
That's right.
but rather for me to kick off with some prepared questions and then receive questions from the audience to be asked.
Fine.
We're just gonna be flies on the wall.
If you'd like to submit a card,
I'm not actually
I could read it.
I'm not going to be there.
That's fine. And then-
Are
and then-
most of the
and then
commissioners
next
planning on
morning,
attending
We
that?
will
Get 'em.
review the comment cards.
I can't.
and
I
we
know
will-
you
we
can.
will-
Are you
Yeah.
planning on attending, Dan?
Oh, yeah. I'll
The
do it.
public?
Absolutely.
The public one? Tom, you're going to be there?
Yeah.
You guys are going to be there?
Whatever I have to
And then
do.
I will be working closely with Chris and with Bonnie on setup for that public meeting. I will also put together a note that if they choose to send to the press advertising that public meeting. And then I would encourage everyone to invite their constituencies and the Chamber of Commerce to that meeting. That would
What
be,
room are we looking at using?
I'm thinking the training room, but I'm open to other suggestions.
Is that big enough?
It's
It's bigger than this.
big.
It is? It's
How many
bigger than
could you
this?
fit seated? Seated with a single podium.
Part of it will be meet and
50,
greet too, though,
80?
right? There would be time to mingle.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about having it in a training room? And-
Yeah, if
and
the seating is, I heard 50 to 80, if there's a room that is closer to 100, that is convenient and appropriate, maybe I can work with Chris and Bonnie and we can think
I
through
think
that.
the training room, probably, number one, if we take the tables out of there, we can get more seating.
Yeah,
Well, or standing room only, you could get a lot of people if it was a kind of a mingle thing.
the hope is that you would have enough seats. There will be a time for people to come up and casually interact with the candidates, but when we actually begin the interview process, the hope is everyone can take a seat in row-style seating with a single podium and a single question area.
How long are you going to have that go on?
Probably, I wrote down 40 minutes.
Well, I'm just wondering, for sitting or standing, I mean, if it was going to be half an hour, people could stand.
Yeah, it would be I would encourage, particularly because we want them to write on a card and then write on a comment card, that we do offer enough
seat.
seats.
So June 7th, and that's going to be at what time?
I don't know.
What time did you set
What
that for?
time did we think?
I thought it was going to be right after work.
Yeah, I will put out a time, but I think we were talking
5?
5 o'clock, 5:30. And with 3 candidates, we'll want to start as close to 5 or 5:30 as we can.
And that was
So
June 7th.
mingle for like an hour and then have your questions.
Yeah, probably closer to 30 minutes.
To
Have the
mingle?
questions, and then have an end time if people want to mingle,
Okay.
as long as they want after.
Okay. You know we're not allowed to have alcohol at these things, so.
We know that.
BYOB.
Well, I will provide to you, and then I will provide to staff for the press, an itinerary for both days, as well as confirming location and times.
Thank you.
Okay.
82
Okay.
dozen chairs.
We
80
are
seats,
down
140
to
standing.
second public comment. Are we good?
We're good, we'll talk.
No, sit down. Thank you. Anybody else for second public comment? Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
That's
Nice
good
job,
that you
Carol.
did that before I commented.
What?
That's good you closed it before I commented.
I did that the other day.
Ken's not allowed.